before we start teaching, actually talk, not really teaching. I would like to say something in English because my English is so limited. So that's why. So let's translate while I want to say something to everyone. So first, I would like to thank you very much for everyone to having me here by the center and then supporting our center and our monastery. Thank you very much for your support, our monastery, our center. And actually, the people wanted me to speak in English, but since my English is very limited, so as I wish to pass all my message to you, I cannot complete all my message to you. That's why it doesn't satisfies me to in English. That's why I would like to have a Walla to translate my main talk. So that's I would like to apologize you to not be speaking English. I just want to speak in my own language. Thank you so much for coming, and then thank you.
So Geshe is starting today by quoting from the great Lama Tsongkhapa, who said, "We're all wishing for happiness and seeking to achieve this through certain causes. However, much more than happiness, we experience an excessive amount of physical and mental suffering." And it is exactly this, and we know this from our experience. We see that all the activities that we engage in are activities we hope will lead us to some experience of happiness. So, whatever activity we do is because we are seeking for happiness. However, it seems that we cannot properly recognize what are the true causes that establish happiness. And therefore, we end up experiencing quite a lot of suffering. A lot of this, most of this, is the suffering of suffering. Very little of this is the suffering of change. So this is what he says. The verse says that far more than happiness, than whatever trifle happiness we might experience, the majority of our experience is suffering, whether it is physical suffering, whether it is mental suffering. So although we are seeking for this happiness, it seems we do not know the exact causes that will bring about this happiness. So, if we're looking for pure happiness, then it is absolutely necessary that we understand what are the specific causes, the correct causes of this happiness. And our teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni, has actually given the full explanation of this by presenting the Four Noble Truths. In this, the first two truths, the truth of origin and the truth of suffering, explain how we engage or how we enter within samsara. And the remaining two noble truths, which is the truth of cessation and the truth of the path, describe how we reverse, how we come out of samsara. However, it seems that if we do not understand the causes that lead us to enter into samsara, it will not be possible to obtain liberation. Therefore, Geshe today would like to speak about recognizing these causes, and this presentation of the causes that make us enter into samsara will be interwoven with a presentation of how we reach at the time of death, what is beneficial to do at the time of death, and beyond death, what can be of benefit or of help in our next life. So definitely within the Asian tradition, in the Asian countries, there's a very strong tradition to support the person who passes away, the person who is about to die. So friends and family will definitely have a certain role to play. And beyond the time of death, there is a period, sometimes it is 49 days. In some countries or some traditions, it might go on for up to 100 days and so forth, that there are certain activities that friends and relatives engage to support the departed. So Geshe would like to begin by explaining why. Why do we do these things? All right, so why do we say that it is very important that relatives help the person as the person is approaching the time of death? So let's go back into the presentation of the Four Noble Truths. We say that the first two noble truths, the truth of origin and the truth of suffering, are the ones that explain how we enter within samsara. And a more extensive presentation of this is through the 12 links of dependent origination. So, in this, what is presented is that due to our ignorance, we engage in karmic activities. We accumulate karma. If you don't accumulate karma, it's not possible that you take another rebirth. So, from ignorance, we accumulate karma, and this karma deposits mental imprints in our consciousness. So, straight away from the beginning, we have the first three links. But then what happens is that once we have created this karma, where or when are we going to see the maturation of the result of this karma? So, in order to see a maturation of a result, this karma has to be activated. And when is it activated? It is actually activated at the time of death through craving and grasping. So craving and grasping actually intensify the power or the capacity of that karma that has been created. And then from there, it leads into the next link, which is the link of existence. So now we have projecting karma and we have the link of existence. So what the friends and relatives can do at the time of death is, if they know what to do, then they can help stop taking rebirth in a bad migration, and therefore this can be beneficial in terms of establishing a good rebirth. But it comes with a caveat that they should know what to do. If they don't know what to do, then they cannot really benefit or interfere in a useful way in the process. And therefore, relatives or friends or whoever is helping at the time of death, is very important that they act very carefully. Okay, so what is it that we should do? We say we should be very careful. So, what is it that we should be doing at that time? Actually, we have instructions of what we should be doing from the lojong, the 7-point mind training. And there we have a presentation of the 5 powers. If we can engage the 5 powers correctly, if we can apply them correctly at that time, this can be very powerful in establishing a rebirth in a pure field. Therefore, Geshe would like today to emphasize the presentation of the 5 powers. Yeah. So actually, we know that if at that time our motivation is proper and our conduct is correct, then this will lead to rebirth in a pure land. Okay, so we say that there is a particular conduct to observe at that time. So again, we say if you can. So it is not 100% that if you cannot assume, if you cannot do it, you ruin your chances. But if you can, it is very good that you lay down in the mode of the Buddha. The Buddha has indicated. So we lay down on our right side, with the right hand underneath the head and the left arm on top of the left leg or hip. So we say, if possible, please try to assume this posture. But because, and we have to say this because many people die and they die ill, or you might die in the hospital. And if you are in the hospital, you could be connected with IV fluids. You could have different things connected to your body. So once you are in a situation like this, it might not be possible that you turn around and you lie on your right side, especially if you are in the hospital or, due to sickness, you might not be able to assume this posture. If you can, it's beneficial. Okay, why do we say that it is beneficial to assume this posture? Because we say at the time of death, Craving and grasping are the two factors that activate karma. So here we're talking about activating negative karma. And together with that negative karma, there are a lot of misconceptions, erroneous misconceptions that are activated. If we are capable of stopping these misconceptions arising at that time, it means that virtuous karma or good karma will be activated, and this will lead to a good rebirth. So, when we say we want to stop misconceptions, these misconceptions actually arise through specific winds. They have winds that support these types of thoughts, and they circulate through the right channel. So, if we lie down in the right, on the right side, what we're doing is we are actually suppressing or closing down that channel, meaning that these winds cannot circulate. If these winds do not circulate, then these misconceptions will not easily arise. Also, what is advised is that we close the nostril, and if we block the nostril, that would also be beneficial. So we can close the nostril either through our finger, pressing with our finger, or if we cannot do this, or you can use cotton, a cotton bud, and block the right nostril. So there is great hope if we do this that we stop those negative misconceptions, which will lead to negative karma. So there's great hope for that.
Naturally.
And and also remember that this was the posture that our teacher Buddha Shakyamuni assumed when he manifested the aspect of passing into paranirvana. So if we are approaching at the time of our death and we assume this posture with that recollection, and we have recollection of the life of our teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, then it is said that merely in liberation in the palm of your hand, it says merely assuming that posture with that recollection has the power to stop rebirth in the lower migrations. So, as we say, it's very important to, at least at the time of death, to apply the five powers. When we talk about the five powers, there is, of course, a way of engaging the five powers through our life whilst we are still alive. And that is a slightly different presentation. But here we are concerned about applying the five powers at the time of the death. The first of the powers is the power of intention. So, the power of intention here refers to the motivation, what motivation we should have at the time of death. So, the best motivation, number one, is always bodhicitta. But even if we don't have this number one, we can have any thoughts, any intention that says, may I never be separated from bodhicitta, or may I'll be able to remember Dharma, go for refuge, and so forth. So it's very important that at that time our motivation is to remain connected with the Dharma. Now, whilst we are explaining all this, we have to qualify it by saying we are talking about, let's say, a peaceful death. Because if you happen to die in an accident, or if you happen to die because a bomb, blew off and you died in an explosion and so forth, in that situation, actually, it's very difficult. There's no time, you cannot apply any of those things. But if you are preparing at home, there is time to think about those things. So the first one is the power of intention. So what is your intention? What are you thinking? You're thinking that at death and after death, even in the bardo, may I not be separated from bodhicitta, may I not be separated from dharma. Now, the other important thing is that at the time of death, it's very important to accumulate as much virtue as possible. So at that time, the instruction is that we should give away or separate ourselves from our possessions. Okay, so we need to qualify this. Like, for example, Geshe was saying, in the monastery, you see people who can see that they are coming at the end of their lives. They completely empty the house, all possessions, they completely give them away. For a householder, for a layperson, this might be very difficult because obviously, you have family, you have kids, you cannot just empty the house and give everything away. But at this point, it's very important to protect your mind from strong afflictions to arise. And therefore, any object that can give rise to strong attachment or hatred and so forth, you should try to distance yourself from that thing. And therefore, friends and relatives who help you at that time, they should intervene. Intervene in which way? So, for example, let's say there are certain people that when you meet them, they really upset you. They really make you angry. So your relatives should say, sorry, at this time of death, please do not come to visit. Right? Don't send this type of people next to the person who is dying. They will upset their mind. Or other people that generate quite a lot of attachment. So please do not bring these people to the deathbed of the person who is dying, because we know with afflictions, if the object that generates attachment is nearby, then the affliction will be generated. If that object is far away, then affliction will not be generated. And the same thing, not just people, but also possessions. Right? If a possession generates strong attachment and so forth, it's best to give it away. So at that point, you have to be without attachment, stop attachment and hatred. So remember that thing we're saying about certain objects that activate or generate afflictions. We had teachings by His Eminence Gosok Rinpoche, who was talking about the practice of the Bodhisattva. It is the practice of the Bodhisattva to give away or to separate long distance from those bad objects, negative objects that generate those afflictions. And the thing is that if those who help the dying person at that point make a mistake, they can actually ruin that person for many lifetimes. So let's say you bring an object or you bring a person who creates a lot of anger in the mind of the dying person or a lot of attachment in the mind of the dying person. Actually, if you do this and this strong affliction arises in them, it can lead them in a bad rebirth. So suppose they take a rebirth as an animal. And then once you fall into the animal rebirth, it's going to take many, many, many lifetimes to come out of this situation. So you are making things so much worse, not just in one lifetime, but in many lifetimes. Many relatives think that, oh, maybe this is the time to reconcile, or maybe this is the time to meet this person, that person. But if it is a person that generates anger or attachment in the mind of the dying person, please do not bring them into the room. It's a big mistake. So at this point, it is very good to employ whatever means we have to make sure that the dying person has a relaxed state of mind, and from that relaxed state of mind, they can generate some virtuous thoughts. So hearing this, you might think, okay, so maybe now I should have images and pictures, let's say, of Buddha Amitabha or of their gurus or spiritual friends, or have recordings of the teachings playing in their room all the time. Well, you should not insist on those things. You should not enforce them. You should not push them to that person, because it might have the opposite effect. If the person accepts them, if they put their mind in a relaxed state, if they put their mind in a positive state, then that will be very good. But if not, please do not insist on implementing those things. So what happens if actually attachment does arise at the time of death? What do we do in this case? We find stories in the Lamrim that address that very issue. So there is a case of a monk who was attached to his begging bowl and to the food or inside the begging bowl. And when he died with great difficulty, and then he was reborn as a worm inside the begging bowl. So actually, great attachment for possessions at that point makes dying very difficult. Another story in the Lamrim, again, it says that there was this monk in Amdo. In general, he was a very good practitioner. And the stable food for the monks is tsampa with butter. And if you have the butter makes everything taste much nicer. So the monk was actually attached to the butter. And when the time of death came, although he was a good practitioner, actually he could not let go. He could not really go through the process of death. But Manjushri, with his
말
omniscience,
만주시는 말 공단 자배양
oh,
공단 자배양
Kungtang, oh sorry, Kungtang Rinpoche, Kungtang Zambeliang, who was able to see the situation. He told him, oh, in the Pure Land, there is butter that is far superior to the butter that we have here. So even through his attachment, he started thinking about heading for the Pure Land, right? And that motivated him to take rebirth. So, what these stories actually tell us, and what we see from experience, is that when attachment arises at the time of death, it makes death process very difficult. It makes difficult to take a good rebirth, and everything becomes very complicated and difficult. So, Geshe was saying, I want to share a story with you. It's a story that we heard that, there was this person who actually had some problem. He was sick, had some problem with digestion and his stomach and so forth. And because that was the nature of the disease, it was very difficult for him to take food. So now the relatives were thinking that if he does not take food, he's not going to live for much longer. And therefore, they insisted, almost force feeding him every day, every day, every day, force feeding him, right? And then that person, because food was like forced into him, that person developed aversion towards food. So he came at the time of death and he had this very strong aversion. He didn't even want to see food. And that became the condition to activate karma for him to take rebirth as a hungry ghost. So this story is there to illustrate that we should be very skillful and very careful what we, let's say, offer or present the person who is dying. So this thing of insisting that they must have the Buddha statue or the picture of the Buddha or the teachings, recordings of the teaching, insisting, might actually create aversion in their mind, right? So it might backfire. So we say that at the time of death, as the time of death approaches, we who take care have to be very careful, very skillful. And as for the person who is passing away, it is very important at that point to accumulate positive karma. And this is the power of the white seed. So it's very important to get rid of negativity and also eliminate attachment by offering their possessions away. The next power is the power of remorse, and this refers to confessing our negativity. It's very important to do this because if we do not deal with negativity, negativity increases. It multiplies every day. So even though we might start up with something which is like a small mistake, something small, something insignificant, if we do not properly address it, if we don't confess and purify, then that thing multiplies and increases and becomes out of hand. So it is very important to engage purification or confession by relying on the four opponent powers. Now, all four the whole group of four must be complete, must be present for purification to be thorough and to be complete, because then that will stop the power, this multiplying power. Negativity, if it's left untreated, harms us in this life and harms us in the future lives, but especially it is very crucial because at the time of death. So as we are approaching death, it's very important if every day we can engage in the practice of confession and purification. There are different means that we can employ, such as, for example, the 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva. There is the long version, there is the short version. Both of them are just as functional, very good. And we can recite the names and the mantras of different Buddhas. So we have all received initiations, Jenangs, and so forth. So, for example, you could recite the mantra of Buddha Shakyamuni, the Medicine Buddha mantra. We have many mantras that we can recite, right? So very important to engage purification of negativity. Especially the 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva, it has a special power. If we recite it 21 times every day, even if the four opponent powers are not complete, 21 recitations of this mantra has the power to stop the increase of negative karma. So there is something very special about this mantra that has this effect. Perhaps we can discuss this in the future some other time. Mm-hmm. So those of us who have received actually highest Yoga Tantra initiation, such as, for example, Yamantaka and so forth, we must remember that we have taken Bodhisattva vows and we have taken Tantric vows. And when we take these vows, there is, we have to be extremely careful because there is quite a lot of negativity that we create in relation to these vows. We break those vows very often, not just lay people, but also ordained people. So this is a common issue with Bodhisattva vows and Tantric vows. So the best is, if you have received highest Yoga Tantra initiation, to perform self-initiation at the time of death, because self-initiation will restore your Bodhisattva vows if they have declined. It will restore your Tantric vows if they have declined. So that will be excellent. If you are not in a condition to take self-initiation by yourself, you can actually request monks to perform self-initiation on your behalf. So you can sponsor self-initiation on your behalf. Right, so that will be very beneficial. So Geshe was saying, I remember in the case, let's say, of your teacher is passing away, your mother is passing away, someone, whoever is passing away. Geshe was saying, I remember we did the confession hundreds of thousands of times, many times, thousands of times taking self-initiation and so forth. If you do that,
di mar da nye ama chongdu
yeah.
geng lab sung ra ngala nye gen chongdu dire che ma nye ama chongdu dire che bar nge ngare dire
Oh,
che be ba
okay. So then, sorry, when Geshe-la's mother was passing away, Geshe was quite young at that time. So it was explained to him that, if you do many confessions to the 35 Buddhas, you do self-initiation and so forth, this during their whole life, this has incredible benefit, because if you can purify the negativity, then imagine what a great benefit this is at the time of death. So it is very important to understand that we accumulate quite a lot of negativity and downfalls. And we can, through proper practice, we can overcome this. To give you an idea, for example, let's say that you practice, you rely on Buddha Amitabha, you recite the mantra, you do offerings to Buddha Amitabha, and so forth. You have the great aspiration. And all of this create the causes to be reborn in the pure land of Buddha Amitabha. However, if at the time of death you have negativities and obscurations that remain unconfessed, have not been purified, that remainder of negativity can act as something that blocks you from taking rebirth in the Pure Land. And there are cases like this. And therefore, it is very good to be prepared. So, whether your relatives or yourself, you can have a discussion with your doctor. And often we are giving this information that, you are ill and you don't have much time left. So, if you have this information, you can use this to your benefit, and you can engage in this purification, because we don't want to reach the time of death and at this time activate some sort of negative karma that is lingering. Okay, so the next power is the power of prayer. I'm sure you're quite familiar with this. So, for example, as we come to the time of death, we pray to be reborn in a pure land. And of course, at that time, it's very important to pray not to be separated from bodhicitta. Now, we know how important it is, the practice of bodhicitta and the practice of tonglen. And it is said, and we have many statements in the Lamrim and so forth, that if you're capable of passing away whilst you're doing the practice of tonglen, there is no doubt whatsoever that you will have a rebirth in a pure land. So we say that if through the power of your intention and the power of your prayers, you have the wish not to be separated from the Dharma at the time of death and the bardo and so forth, and if you make prayers to be reborn in the pure land, the chances are that you will be reborn there. But the most powerful thing and the most important thing is to continue not to be separated from the practice of bodhicitta and engage in your practice of tonglen. So this definitely guarantees rebirth in a pure land. So, for example, we know the case of Geshe Chekawa. Geshe Chekawa was a great practitioner of bodhicitta. He always practiced tonglen. So, as he was always making prayers and aspirations. May I be reborn in the hells to help those suffering sentient beings. As he was approaching the time of his death, actually, Geshe Chekawa had many visions of a pure land, that he was going to be reborn in a pure land. So he asked his attendant and he said, please make some offerings to the Buddha, because I have signs that my wishes are not going to be fulfilled. I'm not going to take rebirth where I was planning. And the attendant was thinking, how could it be that his wishes are not going to be fulfilled? And he asked him, and he said, well, I have the wish, I have been making the wish continuously to be reborn in the hells to benefit sentient beings there. But now I'm having visions that I'm going to be diverted and get a rebirth in the pure land. And, this is the story that indicates the power of the practice of Tonglen, the power of bodhicitta. Even if you pray to be reborn somewhere else, through the power of this practice, you will take rebirth in the Pure Land. So we mentioned here the practice of Tonglen. We could talk endlessly about the great benefits of this practice. If we can engage continuously in this practice, there will be great benefits, whether we are in a pleasant situation, whether we are in an unfavorable conditions or situations and so forth. It will have great effects in this life. Often we can see the results in this life, but definitely in the future life, in terms of taking rebirth in the Pure Land. So Geshe was saying we have stories of actual monks in our monastery. For example, there was a monk in our monastery who was accused for being a thief. He was not a thief, but he was accused. And he was accused, he was arrested, and he ended up in prison where he was restricted. He was bound in the cell, in the prison cell. And when he was there, day and night, continuously, he was doing the practice of Tonglen and constantly praying, may no one, through my experience, may no one have to have, these accusatory bad words may they never hear words like this. So he continued with this practice of Tonglen, and this helped him go through this experience. Also, we have many cases of many accounts when the Chinese came to Tibet. They arrested or they mistreated quite a lot of monks, and there are many cases of great Tonglen practitioners who physically were not harmed. So even though the Chinese would hit them with sticks, there would be no physical harm on their bodies, and so on and so forth. There are many, many stories, and these stories indicate that even in this life, in the present life, if you're a good practitioner of Tonglen, you will be protected from suffering from these bad experiences. But of course, the bigger result is in your next life, being reborn in a pure land, and so forth. So, because the benefits of Tonglen are so immense and inconceivable, it is very important to engage this practice with continuity every day. The last one is the power of familiarity. So, having practiced your entire life, then at the end of the time of death, you say, I will not be separated from the Dharma. And not being separated from the Dharma, this very thing becomes the poa. It becomes the transference of your conscience in a pure land. All right. So this actually gives you the power of familiarity, gives you the certainty of this transition or transference of consciousness.
딱 컴퓨터 개침부터 하기 시작하신 인상다 윤도네.
So we talk about the power of familiarity. The power of familiarity plays a very important role. And for that reason, it is important through the course of our lives to practice Dharma as much as we can. It is quite often, and we see this with young people, to become distracted, right? So they do not really pay attention to the Dharma. They don't really properly engage to the Dharma. And then if you spend your life in this way, if you start this way, you spend your life this way, it will be very difficult at the time of death. So we must be aware that there are many factors, such as karma or certain conditions or friends, the people we associate with, that can divert us away from the Dharma. And therefore, we should always be very careful of the influences of those external factors. So, for example, Geshe was saying, we're talking here about the power of familiarity, how important it is. In our monastery, we had this teacher. He was quite old, and his whole life he really engaged the confession to the 35 Buddhas. And as he became old, he was not very well. For example, he could not eat very well. At the end, he could not sleep very well. But he was continuously reciting the confession to the 35 Buddhas, right? Even at the time he would be sleeping, but he wasn't sleeping. He was reciting all the time. And that shows you the power of familiarity. If you have not cultivated familiarity your entire life, and then the sickness, the suffering of death comes upon you, it's just very difficult to employ all this practice of Dharma, right? It won't come naturally. Of course, we understand that in the modern life that we live, time is very restricted. So we should take advantage of every opportunity. So let's say you are driving somewhere. So once you're driving, you can recite a mantra, you can recite a text, or you are riding in the tube, right? So as you're commuting, this is time where you can be doing some Dharma practice, some recitation of mantra, and so forth. So it's very important, and please cultivate this power of familiarity. Make sure your mind is always connected or related to the Dharma. And remember that, especially for young people, there is so much distraction. Like you see young people, they just walk down the street with the earphones and they're listening to the music and, all sorts of other things that distract the mind. But you can do the opposite of this. You can actually use your time to recite mantra, to go for refuge, accumulate refuge recitations, and so on and so forth. Because if you develop that familiarity, then when you come to the time of sickness, to the time of death, almost naturally, because you're so familiar with the mantras and the refuge prayer and so forth, naturally you will be engaging, reciting those things. Otherwise, it's difficult. So please do as much as you can. Okay, so as we say, important thing at the time of death, please do not try to force anything to the person who is dying, but in a gentle way, you can introduce, for example, a statue of Buddha Amitabha, a photograph of their guru, and so forth. Because if the mind is relaxed, then by looking at these representations and images, they can generate faith towards their teacher, faith towards the Buddha, and so forth. So important to do it gently and do not push those things. And the other thing is that you can try to gently remind the person who is dying refuge and various mantras such as Shakyamuni Buddha, Amitabha Buddha, Medicine Buddha, and so forth. So you could try to recite together with the person, like talk it to them, or you can have a recording, right? Because this can help them, remind to them the practice, remind to them refuge, the mantra, and so forth. So, for example, with reciting Buddha Amitabha mantra, it can help them remember, this intention to take rebirth in the pure realm and so forth. So again, do it gently. So actually, this type of practice, reminding the practice to the person who is passing away, has great benefit, and we have many examples of this. So even in the monasteries, when let's say one of our teachers is passing away, it is who, obviously, in the monastery, a teacher in the monastery will be a practitioner who has practiced the whole life, right? So let's say if Yamantaka is the main practice, so, the students might gather around, or other practitioners gather around and perform the self-initiation. And when they do the self-generation, of course, this will trigger the memory of the practice in the person who is passing away. And if they pass away whilst doing the self-generation and doing the practice of bringing death into the path as the Dhamma body, that would be excellent. And if that can be of benefit to our teachers, of course it can be of benefit to ourselves, right? So at this point, if we can remember the mantras of whatever is your main yidam, whether it is Yamantaka, the mantra of Yamantaka, if it is Amitabha, the mantra of Amitabha, or Medicine Buddha mantra, it's very, very beneficial to to engage, to remember these mantras at this time. Um, Also, in other traditions, not the Gelug tradition, there is also the practice of putting korlo, like protecting mandalas around, or mantras, around the body of the person who is passing away. In our tradition, in the Gelug tradition, we have this practice of reciting specific mantras. So, for example, in the root tantra of Heruka, it says that if you give the mantras of the root mantras of the male and the consort, as well as the essence mantra and the near essence mantra, merely by hearing the sounds of these mantras, with your ears, this stops rebirth into the lower migrations. And the same thing with Guya Samaja mantra, the essence mantra, the near essence mantra, and so forth. Just merely hearing those mantras stops rebirth in the lower migrations. So if we hear about those things, and if the root mantra mentions this, obviously these things are of benefit. So it will be good to do them. So, having heard this, now it's very clear that you can actually engage different things. You can record your Lama the mantra of your lama reciting mantras and so forth, the medicine Buddha mantra and so forth, and have the recordings ready. These things can be of great benefit. As Master Atisha has said, merely hearing your name has the power to stop rebirth in the lower migrations. And he's saying this in praise to Medicine Buddha. Medicine Buddha is, the mantra of Medicine Buddha is extremely powerful in guaranteeing rebirth into a pure realm. And therefore, after someone has passed away, if you can sponsor a Medicine Buddha puja, it will be greatly beneficial. Mm. Also, of course, there are many other mantras that we can recite, such as the mantra of Mitrukpa and so forth, and the mantra and the practice of Jangwa that was performed during the Grand Puja, isn't it? So it says, Geshe was reading a text that was talking about the benefits of these mantras. So those mantras can actually be recited to the person before the person passes away, and because it says that merely by hearing the mantra entering your ear, this activates a good rebirth and it purifies your negativity, so you will not be reborn in the lower migrations. But also after the person has passes away, it is just merely the mantra coming in contact with the body, or even the blessed water coming in contact with the ashes of the body or the bones, the remains of the body, and so forth. It completely purifies heavy negativity that this person might have accumulated, such as, for example, being disrespectful towards your teacher or your abbot and so forth. Okay, so although Geshe was hoping to give much more instructions or advice on what we do, obviously we didn't finish in that section. But today we are going to stop the session here and give time to questions and answers. But we will continue with the presentation on our next session.
저거 당부도 하면 따지 못하고 그래도 니가 좀 셰샤고 다한 로서 뭐가 있어라 다 당부디 아니 이바들 들어도 디 총괄라모 카레 사인 카레 드리베
Yeah.
좋아
Yeah.
디 스칼라 카보레 다 녀바 쳔데 망예바 망보여 망예바스는 따다 딩말 다 녀바 쳔니 다 롱부터는 셰고레 롱부터는 셰고 나게 롱 주주 셰고레 롱 주주 다 셰고 쳔나 알레 디는 따다 셰 차기에 셰 투기에 카셰니 셰는 남사 계속 예 카보레 가르스나 롱 남샤的辛苦了디 다니에 쇼딘 스고레 디 마이닝에 다 다들랑 아주 지 숑나 셰샤바들랑 pena chik ta me do ma wo de yin lam tam to sta do ro si go re de je do de ta de sun ta nye ba chi ke ma re di ma yin kran zo ma ge di so do hare mi chong zheng yin lam ta se do de zu ta de ke ke ma re nga zu do na mi pena so bu de sha ba mi ta me su se ngo shi ma ro nye se pena chong ba yin lam ta de zu ta do ta ya ga si ge re nga zu yin na 디수기 땅 예바 개 말에 땅 예바 진 때와 롱 도바드레다 남주 롱 유즈 저라 앞에나 투세 와도 주고 투세 캔도 도바드레 충분히나 나 딘제 그땅 예바 진 디수니 롱 나샤 셰나 모두 셰투 말 데모도 제땅 예바 진요 말을 숨어치
Okay, so for the first question, what we should practice while we are leaving to prepare for the last moment, Geshe was saying, I think this was exactly the presentation we had in this session, so we don't need to give a different response to this answer. The second one, which is about various signs, okay, signs occurring that might indicate death. When we talk about signs, there are signs that are indefinite, meaning they're not reliable signs, and there are other signs that are much more reliable. So signs that are much more reliable, or certain signs, are signs that come from the winds. So depending on how the words circulate, they give rise to certain indications, certain conceptions, and so forth. But to properly explain this, we must give a full explanation of the winds, which is quite complicated and it's beyond the scope of this class. But to give you an idea, in the Tibetan culture, seeing red, like, red flowers, usually is considered to be a bad indication, not a good sign. But again, it's not a certain sign. In terms of seeing people that you know who might have passed away, in the Tibetan tradition, this is not a bad thing. Actually, seeing relatives or people that you know, that you like, and so forth, dreaming about these people is considered to be a good sign. Okay, so, for signs, we cannot say this is a certain sign and so forth.
아니 디 총바 일람 당에 되는 예버체미도 배는 차셔나 예 아잘다 예 파마 총정 일람 당 그래 일람 당뒤 뒤 모란 총배 다크는 말 가지고 내 몰라 디 강에 요거도 디 일람 당 소나 몰라 추수의 중국에 나무 땅에 중장르디 가르스나 디 갱 손 다디 캐란디 디레스 가르사 파면 아마 모란 거 수에 샤베다 유라시다 켈라 여러 디소부도 디기다 켈라 디기다르다 모두 지게 모란 총배 다크는 말에 제산다 총샤베 아마 일람 당도 몰라 강에 요아디 아마님도 계속 kelajorada 하디기다 추고 준 거를 모두 지기 이 모란 처음에 딱 그는 말 디자인 디제가 따라 개봤지요 말
Yeah. And also having dreams of the deceased, such as your deceased parents and so forth, is not a certain sign. So, for example, Geshe was saying, my sister, when our parents passed away, my sister had dreams of our mother or father and so forth. And that actually caused some difficulty and some anxiety for her. However, Geshe-la's teacher explained that these dreams or this feeling, uncomfortable feeling that you have after dreaming of your mother, your father, and so forth, are not signs indicating that you, the sister, is going to pass away. These signs or these dreams are actually created or sent to you through a god that is interfering, right? A birth god that is interfering.
现在冲上当不当不的，主要是说是拍卖人那的，说是这但是这传销人当下不的，莫让传别大群下个的，莫让了的，就刚才用完之后，但莫的他的缺个大头下个多，其实他的了，你不可能要嘛的，这个你不可能要嘛的送过去。
So, in brief, it was dreaming about your dead ancestors is not at all a sign that indicates that you are going to die. It's actually an indication that you have some other problems.
他得嘛，한게 내 dum이 시나 야고도 다 can I share a story?
Yeah.
Yeah. 다시 나 다당에 아자 dum시 봐. 예 아자라 예 총샤 아메ኛ람 담바다 발라ኛ람 담데 뭘 강가 용구도 와. 강가 용샤부터 뭐란 초베 따르부터 몰라. 아마다 밥에 취시 하도 취고 따르도. 제가 나신기 배나 따뜻한 디제 도와 용구도 가르사 갈 디제 저 가셔 좋았어. 십시egu 제일 하러다. 아주 십시egu 숭구러다. 유지 숭구러. 유지 뉴송사도 단도에 파마 대샤스. 가르스나 파마 되게 예람 땅 것들 해야 돼. 야나네 즉 칼라오래. 이제 그다 따들의 연구도 서러다. 즉 베네디데 연구도 다 콜 숭구도 하셔라. 대부분의 콜 숭이. 그네주 시행하는 연구도. 즉 타슈발람 숭이. 그네주 시행하는 연구도.但是你的穷人我嘛，比较低吧有，其实买来图了用吧有，安尼这的偏偏学习的这个安尼考了电学钱呢，安尼他没进了考，他대부的那些输出，安尼给这钱呢，他考了不了share，他怕嘛的开始学员们他怕嘛有的开始我不了，其实他的。다 대부 벌도 되게 아니 다 뒤도 돼요. 그래서 여기 다 들으시. 그디 로규시에 버려. 로규시에 안디 저 지수 melag디 대부디 시에요 마레스. 그런 시에 되는 상황 코다 냠도 좀 하디어 딕시에 버려. 그 벌도 그 통구레스. 숨을 로규어. 세상 가서 가 망부질라. 니네는 고온디 아니 딱 코도 코르데샤스 코 깨월라면도 코파디 베직 저렇게들 리그도 디수치산다 망보슈르 따지 디마르스다 코다 냠도 저 하디기 아니 셰온데 그 셰바 저지 나와 차는 아주 출거스다디
Mm.
하고서 두기 하고서
C'est vrai comment
관다
ça.
관다 다 딜라다 알다
Okay.
주마도 마시는 되게도 딱 해면도 캐면도 캐
Okay, so there are other things, that might occur. So, for example, when someone dies, then we have this period of 49 days, and we say within 49 days, it's certain that the person would have taken another rebirth. But there are some people who generate this thought that, oh no, the deceased is still with us because even after the 49 days, I'm still having dreams of that person. And the fact that I'm dreaming of this person indicates that they have not moved on into the next rebirth. Or there are some signs indicating, I feel the person is still around. And then Geshe gave a story at the time of Milarepa that I cannot say I understood, so I'm not going to attempt to translate it. I'm really
오케이
sorry.
디디지기도
Anyway,
디디기도
yeah.
오케이 딱
Okay, but that's enough. So this actually falls into the category of what we said that we do not force any practices to the person who is passing away. So we're not going to insist to a Christian who is passing away that we are going to chant mantras to them. All right, this is not going to work. However, if they are relaxed and receptive, hearing these mantras can place imprints in their mind and that can be beneficial.
편도 여버 집어지냐 그래서 가난술 편도 여버는 곧 낭만 매네 콜 편도 그래서
Yeah.
뺀 샤샤는
So,
강고마 아래 유리 이제 총스 표가
mm,
디르샤 야에 카틀 그르샤 김에다 구수인생 상만 낭바치 콜 nga gebe kenshin ko sem hulu suya da ko relax suya da di yungu du sa di na pando ya bor chela ba nge sa di pando yungu de song rush
mm. Otherwise, if the person is relaxed and receptive, the benefit of hearing those mantras is just as much as when we Buddhists hear those mantras. So Geshe said, I have an example of this. When I was in the States, there was this family where the husband was a Catholic, but the other members of the family were Buddhists. And they reported that actually chanting mantras and prayers and so forth put the husband into a relaxed state. So that was beneficial.
So question 4, Gishla, when a person is close to death, they may experience great fear and distress. The body may be undergoing a natural process of dissolution at this stage. And for those present at the bedside, what is the most skillful and compassionate way to comfort a dying person?
di song rush ta dila ta chirim di shina ya bo yor ta pe je di tiwa tinge di de khanje ina da khadla bu ina chirim shin to ba ina ta ji chiwe namba ko na shin to ba ina ane ta 갑자기 뒤에나 추나 연구데 추나 뭐시바 연구래 안 지금 심바 텔라 때네 아니 가사 대한 지금 치료 강에 충마다 아니 대신 뭐 대가랑 게 끼는 막 가도 돼 편도요 다 디엔자 디 거디 주마 당수 가래 바도 샌드 치디 치기 디리시에 이게 소라시
Okay, so in general, of course, when the person undergoes the process of death, because we have the solution of gross awareness and elements and so forth, there are many mistaken appearances, and there can be a lot of suffering and anxiety that arises in the mind of the dying person. And if those who attend to the dying know how to stop let's say this reaction, not stop those things, then this can be of benefit. We will come to the presentation of this when we actually engage our text in the next session.
So next question 5, the moment we pass away, we are unconscious. How do we remember what we have learned or practice what we have learned?
아 디디제 가르사 unconscious 다 말에 갑디 뒤에 배나 때 총뒤 배나다 남시 마포 보던 남시 참모 요래 남시 참모 요배 남시 참모 될라 다즉 나라면 양면 영은 뒤 편도 제토야 요래 나라면 양면 매바 이내야 다 시의 유중이 내가 없어 아니 남 소소시 디다 셈디 쇼단 제디나 땡땡 뒤 편도 연구래 저 가르스나 디 페바디 슈기 갑디디 아니 다시즘 참모디 즉다 게스는 교토구에는 먼저 가다 가야 되면은 때내다 근데 깨워 치마디 깨워 야보실내 수에지다 대야베 최단 저 용도 했는데 저도 그래서 대라 가르쳐 올라봐야나 다 이걸 맛이 코네 펜바다 이렇게 전부를 송로시.
All right, so at this point, you are not unconscious. Perhaps coarse consciousness has subsided. However, subtle consciousness is still operational. So, if you are a practitioner of Hatha Yoga Tantra, at that point, you can engage the practice of Hatha Yoga Tantra with that subtle consciousness. Even if you're not a practitioner of Hatha Yoga Tantra, through the power of your intention, you can make sure that even at that stage, your mind remains connected, not separated from the Dharma. And therefore, you can make sure that you direct the mind towards virtue, and this will definitely bring about a good future rebirth. So, to be able to do that at the time of death, it's very important before you die to set your intention and say, when I'm dying and after death, I will not be separated from the
또
death.
맞아요 봐. 또
Yeah.
맞냐면
And so the practice of the 5 powers is very important.
Question 6. Once the dissolution process is complete, can the deceased still experience physical pain if the loved ones touch their body?
뒤에 말을 넣으시.
No,
No.
no.
No. Okay. Number 2. For an ordinary layperson, how long is this stage estimated to last?
거기 쓰고 왔다.
That means like if when before the dissolution process complete.
알레 디다티
So
근데 유럽 요말 is very not long.
not long.
네,
Yeah.
다디야 네 당연히 쉬어야 돼. Resolution 디 유럽을 라디 남세 마사고도 개체물로 지금 차 되나 네 유럽을 하기도 우세 유럽을 쉬울 한가들이 요 베나 롱팀으로 팀빙가로 우세네 베 마포마토 버시네 베 유럽을 한가들이 연구도 봐天산다 차단 마기에 되게 레더다 차단 마기에 개 차단 마기에 바 차단 마기에 셈 흘려 여바이나 아니 요구 팀을 되면은 주주 예바요 말 소리서들.
Okay, so in general, it is not long, but as we mentioned during the teachings, there can be things that can interfere so that you cannot finish, you cannot go through the process of death as you should. And we mentioned here that if we have remaining possessions towards which we have strong anger or aversion, and we activate this type of thoughts, then this interferes with the process of death, and we cannot finish, we cannot go quickly through the process.
Sorry, Gisela, I have one question. The dissolution process bracket the Bardo stage. Dissolution is not Bardo, right?
No.
Yeah, it's not.
Dying.
Yeah, so the die finish, then go to Bardo.
Yes.
So just clarify this part. Okay, number 3, is organ donation advisable under the circumstances of dissolution, I feel, because in the process of maybe just newly, freshly died, is organ donation.
디 렌자 하고 싶어도 그러 디 렌드 빼자 하고도 다디 람마신 지제 다디 오늘 시간라 즉디 소수 디 낭신 라우라다 인당 디수제 디 페도시 뭐 쉬우로 오늘 미시다지 소소 좀 도와라다 빼야 거다디 디체토나 칸다리 힘베니 디 the organ 거야 가지고 거디 나 규면다 하제제
Lamsang.
아
Lamsang.
우체부터 거거로
우체보다 lamsang 랭거래.
티티스 여러 사고 다른 애들 나디 나시 표금 다디 잡으셔 버려 람산 라토 문제 다들 간데서 자고 있나 펜도는 첨부시 물에 가르스나다 배는 마시고는 그 소수 오르간을 땅바 인선 집에 냠네 첨부로 자주 세배 냠네 그러와 제가 랑기 배 땡땡 소수 디 집에 냠네 제 전주 배 생리 시안을 펜스 첨부 깨봐 인선 땡네 깨네 약을 깨 땡네 편도요다 지사다 나다 가더다 가야는 면에 디 오르간 때 약을 앞에 나서다
Mhm.
로
Okay, so Geshe is undeniable that if you donate your organs, it is unbelievable benefit for the recipients of the organ. But of course, here, this is a very difficult question because the question is exactly when or how quickly are the organs harvested? And Geshe says, I'm not 100% familiar with the process, like exactly when do they take the organs. However, if you engage in that practice with the pure intention to benefit others, and you think before you pass away, you say, when I pass away, I want to donate my organs. I mean, this is the practice of the bodhisattvas who practice generosity with their body. And if it is done properly, definitely this is a practice that guarantees rebirth into a very good type of rebirth. But Geshe says, because I don't know the exact time of harvesting the organs, I am a bit hesitant to 100% endorse it.
다 디드냥도 아직 랑이 되었다. 예 남주 삼성 말한 것이 뭐지로 디치기요 다 하려고 그래. 롭전도 치기요. 딱 아주 로춘중 있는 계속 하가었다. 로친구 차 산안에 총으로 디제기도 하래. 로어디 땅기도 가르디 갈래 그래.
Resuscitate. Yeah, to resuscitate.
오다 디딱 마다나 야구도. 가면 수도 가야도 와. 디땅셔도 아니 뺐다 셈을 용하기는 요마로다. 디제 돈을 총고 주나는 아니 셈 디스터브 슈셔 디차바이나 아니 콘로다 담을 게 냐가 쇼도 디제 냥 냠용을 총스 냐 통사 디제 총 되버시 티엔산다 디제 까다 요나 디까다 패키지 부르셨다 오르겐테스 야쿠레 다 디주 디제 제바이나 다 로겐고 인디다 마시브 데사는 요말 로첨부시나 흐르시키네 야그러와 다 로친주 이나는 야디 하트 프레셔도 때네 야수야 레와 저러다 로첨부이나 디주 치갈라고 디제 제 까다 보이나 가야데 캐치 부르시 디스터브는 쇼도 올라스
Mhm. Yeah, so Geshe was saying there is one thing that I know from my own experience and I have seen, and this is resuscitation. So Geshe was saying, especially for those who are a little bit older in age, it is best if there is no resuscitation. So if you can write it down and leave instructions, please do not resuscitate. Because if you resuscitate, if you make the attempt to resuscitate the body, of course, you disturb the body, you disturb the mind, and, anger might arise and all sorts of afflictions might arise. So this is actually totally undesirable. If it is the case of a young person who has just suffered, heart failure and they try to resuscitate, there is benefit and the body reacts in a different way. But for an older person, if you can stop resuscitation, I think this will be the best. And organ donation is good.
오케이.
Number 4, can Geshe please explain what is meant by clear light during Bardo stage? Is it perceived like physically bright light? What does it look like from the perspective of
다
consciousness?
당부들 클레르한테 바둘로 말해. 저 디시스 타면에 가서 디코르디다 지난 클레르한테 한다시 주주 말해 중앙 가서 딜리그로 하래. 바로 선대 가서 퇴행 거래. 된다 디코르디 때 칼라버다 외세 코르디 옹 마슈발 마샤 쪽 말해 소시.
Okay, so actually, clear light does not occur during the bardo. This occurs during the process of death. This is not something that is suitable to discuss right now. We will discuss it in this class later on when we engage the text that we have for for the highest yoga tantra practitioners. Okay.
Question 5. After the complete dissolution of consciousness, when the body is considered an empty shell, does the funeral wakes and prayers still benefit the deceased?
So you mean when consciousness has departed the body, has left the
Yes.
body?
Yes, left the
And it,
body already.
okay, yeah.
Does funeral prayer still benefit the deceased or not?
인다 이 펜토도 그래. 내가 아주 담기 저번 된 거로 고모 조사는 총산에 말한 게 때도 펜토요. 페널 프레셔 때도 펜토요. 소리지.
Yeah, definitely there is benefit. And of course, we do prayers after the person has died, and there's definite benefit from these prayers.
So, okay, so number 5 is done, okay? Number 6,
Yeah.
how does making tata help? How does making the tata using the ashes of the deceased help the departed?
다나 디양 가바칭에 제이. 총사디 차자 개베디 간제 지근에 따야 다양 초가 양다고 땅에는 담는 디그러면 초가 땅면은 마접라 교잉에 가르스나 다델 룸이요. 룸체면 루기요. 엄마 몽기 부 아니 즉 니웨 캄 시가페니 아니 디 카레 라른 루기드르죠. 나브리나나 아니 즉디 추리베 뜸바디 마게 니웨 둥에 냥데 버시 시그니 치료 뜸바디게 다 몽게 볼 랭코르스다 코란소고 진주소라 아니 그 최대한들 초바 마셔르지스 그 최대한 초바 가져 제베 수역이 마게 니월 네딩에 코란 뜸바들 둥에 치워 연구도 숨어다 니 김젠 찍어지지 않았다. 마란소 디 데보 속에 찾았어요. 들 차 준비 시기 되어 있나? 콜뉴에냐가 시타요. 디엔자 사자 마수에 버지 디 애셔스 파다 슐로 규르기나 마 토르기나 가르치는 야쇼르 모두 지기 찾았어요. 디또 냐가 차보요.
Mm. So okay, so Geshe is saying here, about making tsatsas using the ashes. Again, we have to be very careful with this. If the ritual is done properly, then you can do it. Many times the ritual is not done properly, and in this case, it can cause more harm than benefit. And therefore, if the ritual is not done properly, it is best you don't make tsatsas with the ashes, but instead you scatter the ashes in the ocean, in the garden, or wherever. We have stories of this in the Lamrim about those non-group, a non-Buddhist teacher, and there was the story of whether they should make stupa or have a way of venerating the remains of this teacher. But the advice was do not do this because it will be more harm.
Okay, thank you, Gishla. Question 7, I think, is the HYT class. Just now, Gishla mentioned.
Yeah, yes.
So we go to question 8. In Singapore, we practice advanced care planning, where we give advanced instructions to the hospital or the caregivers how to handle us upon death. The maximum amount of time the hospital can keep our body untouched in the hospital is 8 hours. As dying is usually a gradual process, we are often told not to touch the body. So what signs do we have to see to know it is safe to touch the body? Is 8 hours sufficient for the average person?
다들 탑시 매로 다들어. 탑시 매로 주세 게라 샤 쇼그면은 얘들 게라 샤라는 게 생겨요 말로. 자외다 즉 미총산에 즉 튠 대세월에 당한다 남시 막보가 대통령에 따라들라 대 투가라 최도 되거다. 좋아. 최대니 최포르도 다 남샤균디 밑도 영어 있나 아니 장생 까만 자서 까만 자디도 다 남시 포였다. 그러와 디메나니 장생 까만 자에 맹은 줄아니 다 빡빡 템바이나. 빡어도 템바로. 남시 대 영어 줄 빡빡 디마 미규만 싶어 러시아다. 그러 그 템바이나 아주 벤다 밑에 좀볼 텐도 봐 러시아도 저우르다 퇴상아이나 두 대디르다. 디제 따따여다. 다 디니 탈로는 요 말에 아니 주도 게디 말라라나 로다.
So actually, in a situation like this, it's actually we don't have much room to maneuver. We're only allowed to keep the body for 8 hours in the hospital without passing. So what are we looking here for, signs or no signs? There's a definite time limit. Okay, if we want to talk about signs, if the consciousness is still within the body, there is actually warmth, there is heat at the area of the heart. If we're talking about proper practitioner, you can see the white and the red element exiting from the nose and the lower part of the body. And this is an indication that consciousness has departed and moved into the bardo. But when this occurs, it occurs for some, not for others. And other indication is if you pinch the flesh, whether the flesh bounces back or whether it remains kind of like irresponsive. Okay, so there are some signs that can give us indication, but you only have 8 hours. You cannot go beyond 8 hours. So.
Oh, Geshe is saying maximum 8 hours, so just maximum don't touch.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 2, if moving the body is unavoidable, for example, when we move the body from hospital to like the home or to the mortuary, how should we move the body? When can we allow the funeral parlor to prepare the body?
Tadi funeral chezu nimo sum shatunan yakshore. Nimo sum shamodono nimo chikde chega. Dire shatuna yakshu dije chena yakshore labs.
Okay, so if we can allow for 3 days where the body is not touched, that would be wonderful. If not, 1.5 days.
Funeral chedreda. Funeral chedi dije chena.
Yeah,
Geshe,
yeah.
you mean the length of the funeral?
Yeah.
1.5
No.
No, before.
After the
The death.
1.5 day, we can do funeral or 3 days.
How
After.
to yeah. Yeah, lor.
Or one after 1 day.
After 1 day, then let people take.
Okay. Okay, take the move did 8 hour 10 case around.
Yeah.
Move we have no choice.
Yeah.
After 8
Yeah,
hours,
we have no
to move,
choice.
yeah. We have to move, yeah. So then we don't have any choice.
Yeah, so we
But
take the maximum.
perform the funeral, yeah.
Yeah.
So we can do after 3 days or 1.5 days, we can do. Mare.
Doctor. Okay.
The touch
Yeah.
we have no choice to touch.
Yeah.
Because the hospital stuff they will move the body.
Yeah, no choice.
No choice.
Yeah, lor. Doctor also say no choice. Die at home. Doctor say die at home the best.
Yeah.
Die at home. Then can keep for 1 day if die at home. Really, Ling?
Die home is also difficult. Yeah, people sick. Then how can we let them die in home? Yeah. No.
You see, if you die in the hospital, even moment you die, they think you die, they have to check you, so they will touch the body already. So die home is the best, if you ask me. From what you tell me, I would prefer to die at home. If I have a choice.
Yeah, that I also prefer that too. Like I'll share you my story. Yeah, it's good to share. Yeah, people are laughing. That's very good. Let's speak myself. Yeah, no need the translator. So when my teacher, he's very great practitioner. I can definitely say he's a great practitioner where he practiced, but from every daily practice, he was a great practitioner. And then after he passed away, we have a lot of sign, because usually when normal people pass away, after 24 hours, our body is stiff. Yeah, his body is after 5-6 days still flexible. Okay, and then when normal people pass away, our body compose. Yeah, it become a rot or the smell bad. Yeah, my teacher, day it passed away, his body become a very good smell. It's amazing, different smell. It just doesn't look like the what do you call
Perfume. Yeah.
perfume or something like that. It's not like that. It's kind of cannot explain by me. It's just very good smell. At the time, it was very hot, very hot. But day pass, his body give me a good smell, and his body is still very flexible after 5-6 days. Okay, and then we know he's in the meditation process during that time because his heart is still warm. After then day by day, his face is very shiny because usually he was sick. He's like look weak, but after 24 hours, his face is more shiny and more beautiful. So anyway, before he was passed away, he was in hospital, and then the time he called me in the ICU. He was in ICU, and he put a lot of the tube and then oxygen, many things. Yeah, he cannot speak. He said there's something giving sign to me. Yeah, I didn't get it. What he's talking about me, and then after 5 minutes, and then he was smiling me, and then touched me my head, and then hit me a little bit. And right after I left the ICU, he became the coma. And then doctor said, we still have a hope for him to recover. But then that late night, another doctor come. He said that you are Buddhism, you do a lot of great puja. So my advice, take back to home, best way. Then I realized that other doctors are trying to get the money, yeah, make money. They say keep in the ICU, yeah. So they are making money. And then still he's not passed away. So I need oxygen with him, yeah. So it's difficult more to get that oxygen if I get back to the monastery. So somehow that night I get the big oxygen cylinder. Then tomorrow morning we carry back to our home, our room. Then we do the perform puja. So he was good practitioner of the Chakra. So we recite the Chakra empowerment, the self empowerment puja. So during that way the what do you call Shiva Chugulamge Kala Orda.
Bringing death into the path as the Dharma body.
Yeah, that time he passed away, and then he was in dead meditative state. So still he was in coma and he was in ICU. I able to brought back to my room, our room, and like my mom, she was in the cancer and a lot of difficulties. I brought back to him my temple. I even didn't send him to his family home. I bring back my home, my room. She was passed away in my room, same as my father too. I did that, yeah, because I know what to do, yeah. But it's, as the doctor said, it's best choices in the home, but we cannot say that, yeah. So many people, when we die, they're still hoping to alive, and they're requesting to us to bring to hospital. Why don't we to bring to hospital? Yeah, that's always everybody wish to live, even the very old age, even 90 years, 100 years, they want to live. No one want to go to next life, yeah. So they still want to live. So in order to live, they want to go to hospital to survive, yeah. So we cannot say, oh, to go back to home and then die, yeah. That's difficult. But best way is that. But it's up to you.
Okay, thank you, Geshe. The next question, will embalmment affect the dying process? Would it be better to choose not
Which number?
the same question, but number 3? Number 3?
Mm-hmm.
Will embalmment affect the dying process? Would it be better to choose not to embalm the body? If no embalmment is better, is there any benefit for the dying person in having a wake? Is there?
Yeah, Geshe-la koran su lukso kare na ro di mirorwe che do koran su men da zering mindrawa supo la zure rawa tene de supo di jurimbo degre men da ze mindrawa june tabe che sana Ling remoche goma rawa koran su Dide ejurembo degres. Dusin pengeres pengmarves. Yama pewa ina kuranso rogam yorwa. Rogam rodi rogam na lasha. Tenete por la tab pingia la sopa ngo semba kono so melam javi ore ketsa se ore la sopa de
Okay, that did dig the large. Raw. That the man sure the pendon kayama, rather. Pendo yama, pendo yoshi, melam yadreda. Any the funeral chen melam yad, rocom shamanam yazun, digre, so you see a condition degree yakuyores. Madojigi did men sure that sugar, sooner digre kayama, maris, no gig maris, raw. Pento kayamaris, larista. That's one
Yeah.
like pentogroda.
Okay, so in terms of the embalmment process, well, this applying medicine to the body, medicinal, usually there are some medicinal, whatever substances that are applied. It will not harm the body, most probably will not benefit the body. So it could go either way. However, in the case of the wake, where you have the casket, you have the body in the casket, and there are relatives and friends around making prayers. Those prayers in the wake, do you do prayers in the wake?
Yes.
Yes, so that can be of benefit. Yeah, that is of
Yeah, but
benefit.
I think usually because the embalmment is happen very soon. Oh, correct. If it is the timing of the embalmment.
Dinde yinba yina rwa, ta pena chash ta yinga laya dili, pena sunga tsa shimbuzi zhang ding nga jab dila, chuya dila. Ani chuya shangani pendo yungu rwa ta, rwa. Rwa, ta
Geshe was
pena
saying,
chash
we,
ngara ngara, nyesha ngara ashan chong sung du nga ba chimba yinba, di nga jab shagui di yak shio de.
So Geshe was saying, remember the power of the mantras. So you recite one of those very powerful mantras to the embalming substances and the medicine that will be applied to the body. And then when you do this, it's applied to the body, and there you have the benefit. So Geshe was saying, when my when my uncle passed away, this is what I did. I did the mantra thing
Yeah,
for the body.
But then we need the embalmment person to.
doesn't matter. Yeah, yeah, did
Okay, this will be okay.
Pena, like example, yeah, the
Thanks for a suggestion. Okay, we will look into this.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can explain that. Yeah.
No. Yeah. But it's good. Okay, thank you, Keshila.
And then, like me, yeah, when I go out, like any country, sometimes accidentally I was invited to the funeral, so I always recite mantra and blow them, and then try my best.
Yeah.
Whether the deceased family requested to me or not, it doesn't matter. I try my best to help. Yeah. So that's helpful. You invite the monks, yes, to let them pray. Yeah, that's the best way.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Formaldehyde. Yeah. So he's explaining from the website, embalming process means they use some tools to take out the fluid from the body and they inject chemicals into the body. Yeah.
I think maybe that's maybe good for you to get that information. Yeah. Okay. High Lama, yeah. Before they pass away, many of High Lama, like our great Guru Lati Rinpoche, I think 2-3 days before they know that they are dying, yeah, they always have a diarrhea.
Yeah.
Most, I think 100% I can say that.
Diarrhea. Yeah.
They clean their body.
Yeah.
In the body.
So after even 1 month, their body doesn't give any bad smell because of no substance inside. Like my teacher, he cleaned up everything before he passed away. Before he go to ICU, he cleaned everything. same kind of idea, yeah. Because they have their nose, yeah.
Yeah.
They don't want to have give any insight that substance they give you the bad smell.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So I think about the embalming is like the timing, right? Everybody agrees the timing of the embalm because it's related to the previous discussion, ma. It's the time which should yeah. If you have a choice, then after 1 day, then you embalm. Okay.
Okay,
If not, then we don't embalm. Okay. Number 4. You want to continue on?
No, go ahead.
Okay, number 4, I think we talked about it just now, which is the donation of the organs.
Okay, that
So
be done, yeah.
we go to number 5.
Mhm.
What is the POA practice and how can we request to receive the POA practice if we are interested?
Oh, that's very good. I want to explain that tomorrow.
Okay, tomorrow. Please come again tomorrow. Number 6, what is the rainbow body and how do we practice?
That
Wow,
that's
high level.
high level practice.
High level.
I cannot.
Next. What would be some of the pujas that would be beneficial for the dying? How do we request for such pujas? Please come and talk to me.
Tomorrow. This tomorrow.
Okay. Okay, talk tomorrow. Okay, so all this whole thing, talk tomorrow, okay? Should we ask for puja only if the person is already pronounced dead? Actually, tomorrow, okay?
Yeah. That's tomorrow too.
Yeah. Okay, number 8. Based on Buddhism, does it matter whether a body is cremated or buried? Does it matter what sort of burial is chosen, like the sea or the tree or the columbarium? How do we marry local customs and culture with the dying process?
Tadi keba yomar suncharuji. Keba
Yeah,
yomar
there's
is
no difference. There's no
Yeah.
difference.
No difference.
Yeah.
Already die. Okay.
ta mare ta di laro ta pheba ta be mo chon ni chigre ta di komsör jire phebe ro be ba ina ta keba chima di di khara khode chul shi da nam dole zuge namshi sang yung la da go di keba yugi mare so le ro
Mm.
ro
Okay,
ma
so
to
yeah.
shema da keba yomar
It's actually, there's no difference. There is this idea in Tibetan culture that you don't bury the dead because if you bury the dead, it creates a condition so that in their next life they are not very intelligent and so forth. But there is no proof of that. How intelligent you will be in your next life depends on your karma, not whether you are buried under the ground or and so forth. Right. So
Interesting.
actually, there's no interest. There's no difference, and these are just some
ro
cultural.
di la da la go de ro bena phebe ta phel chen so chado che de ro chal tre go ro chal to ne rog ze di cha khoban cha san dang ma sal yu she ga ke ba de la chi ba
So,
ro
in Tibet, the sky burial was a traditional burial, which means you chop up the body in pieces and you give it to the eagles and the birds.
Vultures. Yeah.
But the vultures. So what's nice about feeding the vultures? They consume the body and then it goes through the digestive system and it comes out the other end as
chi ba ro di sal be ba da di ba ke ba khar do che ba che yo mare
So what's the difference between burying the body under the ground and giving it to the vultures? Going into the stomach of the vulture and coming out on the
ke
other
ba
end?
che ro the water proof and doesn't matter depend on the karma yeah
Yeah.
that's karma
Become
sometimes water me put somewhere very down yeah
Okay. So
Okay.
vulture poo is no guarantee for greater intelligence. Next life. Okay.
Okay, the
Okay,
next stop.
the
Stop.
quarter to
Yeah.
good to stop
Yeah. Okay, see you all tomorrow. Thank you, Geshe-la. Okay. Want to do dedication?